Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Well, there are news and news and news, and some news are so startling that they are sometimes welcome, albeit there is always some cause for concern. The news that for the first time in history, since independence, the government of one province, Uttar Pradesh, has asked that those people responsible for destroying public property must be penalized and must be asked to pay for what they have destroyed. In one of the cities, the people themselves voluntarily, when this order was issued, contributed 600,000 rupees and paid for the loss of the property. There has been a lot of criticism of that. And I find the newspapers, the lead articles, op-eds, all criticizing this action of Yogi Adityanath, the redoubtable premier chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, who is known for his administrative skills and his strict attitude. Nevertheless, I fully appreciate it because I am reminded of an incident in my own life. In Delhi University, there's a college, Deshmukh College, and the students had some grounds. At that time, the former finance minister of India was Anil Jaitley, Arun Jaitley. He was the president of the Delhi Students Union, and they organized a strike. We were watching. Then they hijacked a bus and they wanted to burn it. I rushed to them. I told them, look here, under no circumstances you should burn a bus. First, hijacking the bus is bad. You have put the commuters, the travelers at risk and have disturbed them. Your fight is with the government or with the university authorities. Do it. Demonstrate. I don't object to it. But I would not be permitting you to burn the property. They won't hear. And I had to order police lathi charge. It was harsh, Mayor. But as I always say, harsh remedies need harsh mayors. And I wouldn't mind protecting my property because all public property is my property. I pay for that. When I say I mean all the taxpayers, all the citizens. And we had to be very tough at that time. The result was horrendous. My house was stoned, and by the time then I was, and my family were awarded police protection 24 by 7. Ultimately, Jetli came to my wife, touched her feet, apologized. But as I said, I'm very firm in the principle that if in environment we say that the polluter should pay the carbon tax, why should the destroyer not pay retribution for his act? It has never been done before. I agree. But it should never be done. And the newspapers which say that it has never been done are telling a dirty lie. It has been done. During the British time, I remember fully well my father used to tell me, and I have studied, there used to be collective fines for wrongdoing. If something has been done wrong in one area, some public property has been destroyed, they would impose a collective fine and all the people living in that area, whether they were guilty or not, were penalized. So it has been done before. And most of the sporadic actions of the various state governments have taken the war past for recovery of damage of protesters have now been judicially mandated. There is a Supreme Court order of 2007 and some High Court orders also, and they have been utilized. There is a law in India against the destruction of public property, where incidents of rioting, vandalism, and arson have become a normal matter for the demonstrators and the protesters in, say, India. I mean, say you are protesting against, say, as nowadays, against uh, the act regarding the citizenship. Fine. Then how is a bus, a train, the railway station responsible for that? Why should you vent your anger against yourself? It's akin to committing suicide. But who does it? It's the politicians who do it. So if you know the history, the Supreme Court had appointed two committees. One was headed by reformer former Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice K.T. Thomas, and the second was headed by a great jurist, Falira Nariman. The Thomas Committee recommended that prevention of damage to the public property recommends that there must be provision that the leaders of those parties which call for agitation and protest, call for direct action, they should be tried as guilty of the abetment. And the Nariman Committee said very clearly that the Supreme Court could evolve a role of a liability for vandalism and rioting leading to the destruction of public and private property. So even the private property was supposed to be covered. And this liability is to be borne by whom? Not by the public, not by the taxpayer, by the perpetrators as well as the organizers of the groups and the event. And it has to be shared as finally decided by the High Court or the Supreme Court. The law, Public Property Act of 1948, very clearly says, and it was amended in 84 then, anyone who commits a mischief by doing an act in respect of any public property can be jailed up to 5 years and a fine are both. And the provision for this is also there in the Indian Penal Code. So, public property would include what? Any building, installation, property in connection with the production, distribution, supply of light, power, water, energy, oil, sewage works, factory, public transportation, communication, building, installation, or other property used in any connection whatsoever. Supreme Court has been clear all the time that this wanton destruction is not acceptable. It's not a part of the peaceful protest. Peaceful protest means taking out a procession, sitting on a protest without disturbing others. So in 2007, the Supreme Court took suo motu cognizance of various instances. There was a large scale destruction, and it was way back in 2007. And these properties were destroyed during the agitations, Bandh, and Lai. And the Bandh is what? You close down the whole city, destroying the life, the property. And I've seen ambulance services being disturbed, and people have died in that. So these committees gave a report, and in 2007, there was a case in Supreme Court, destruction of public and private properties in the state of Andhra Pradesh and others. So Supreme Court issued guidelines based on these two expert committees. And the Supreme Court said another thing very interesting, which no newspaper and no TV anchor or so-called experts are saying. Mostly, any accused is innocent till proved guilty. Supreme Court said no. In this case, where public property is destroyed, the onus of proof of innocence lies with the accused. You are guilty until you prove or prove innocent. So there are two cases where, according to the Supreme Court, not according to Modi, not according to Amit Shah, not according to Yogi Adityanath, but according to Supreme Court, in case you destroy public property and you are charged with that, then you are guilty until you can prove yourself to be innocent. The other thing is the rape case. You are guilty till you are proved innocent. These are the only two cases, two crimes, where the burden has been shifted to the accused to prove his innocence. And Supreme Court said that and the law must be amended to give the court the power to draw a presumption. So courts have to have a presumption that the man is guilty of destroying public property, and then it's open to the accused to rebut such presumption. And this is something very serious. And imagine it if this is a judicial judgment and there's been no review petition which weighs and it goes back to 2007 and 2009, then what Yogi Adityanath is doing, how is that wrong? Tell me that. Can any newspaper editor, any writer, any so called expert, any jurist challenge Yogi Adityanath because he is doing exactly what the Supreme Court has directed to do? And the fact that in Bulandshahr, the guilty people agreed and compensated the government to the tune of 600,000 rupees shows that this works. And then they made a commitment that they will not do so in future. And unfortunately, these guidelines by the Supreme Court were ignored because the politicians are dishonest. They know that today, if the opposition is doing some such sort of a thing and is indulging in arts and looting and destroying, tomorrow they'll be doing the same thing. However, Modi and Yogi Adityanath are made of the different ilk. They say no, they have done something wrong. And if we do something wrong, okay, we are ready to face punishment. But at present, the case is that they have done something wrong, so they must be punished. I think this is something which should be welcomed than criticized. You remember, there was a, in 2015 there was an agitation in Gujarat. One Hardik Patel, he was charged with sedition and destruction of public property. But he was not punished because there was no evidence that he had called for violence. So there has to be a proof, there has to be a recording where the leader says, let's destroy it, as in case of Deshbandhu College, where one leader stated, let's burn the bus. And I immediately ordered the police to lathi charge. Lathi charge is a baton charge. They start beating. So in 2017, there was a case of Cosby Jacob versus Union of India. Again, the Supreme Court said that the petitioners are the people who suffer, private people who suffer because of these agitations must be compensated. And now, when the people said that it has never been done, let them remind me that in 2011, Allahabad High Court ordered the recovery of damages from the protesters. This was done in UP. In August, in Haryana 2017, a so called God man, Ram Rahim, was arrested and his followers started burning, looting, destroying public property. Then the High Court of Punjab and Haryana ordered the government to attach the properties, and all the properties of that so called godman were attached as a compensation for the destruction. So, say that it's communally violated is wrong. It is, in fact, carrying out the decisions and orders and the direction of the Supreme Court and the High Court. And it's correct as well. As I said earlier, there has to be retribution. You cannot let the people go free. And it is the first time. Good. Government has taken. Earlier, it is only the Supreme Court or the High Court which used to order it. And now the executive has realized its responsibility. They are the custodians of the public property. And if they think that it has been wrong and the people are guilty, let them go to court, prove that they are not guilty, and not pay the damage. Whenever an agitation is called at the invitation of the political party or an elected leader, a report should be registered by the police immediately. That's the Supreme Court order. And why it's not done? Then any public department, any public corporation can assess the damage and ask the claims to be filed. And do you know what the directions are? That this penalty shall be recovered as a public revenue, as a under the Indian Revenue Act. The and then under the Revenue Recovery Act, the government has only to pass an order and it will be recovered. And in case the person agreed as a claim, he can go to a court of law and say that recovery has been first, but first he has to pay it. So that's why those Blumshire people paid. They said, okay, we are guilty, we will not be able to prove that we are innocent. So let's pay. Then any individual can file a report when he sees that the public property is damaged and the money has to be recovered from the guilty people. Of course, the guilty would be given an opportunity to be heard, but not by court, by the competent authority. That is the executive magistrate, the district collector, or any other designated officer. And if the person is found guilty by the authority, then the money has to be recovered under the Indian Revenue Recovery Act. I think this action of Yogi Adityanath should be followed up by all the governments. And it's incumbent on the Modi government to introduce a law on the lines of the orders passed by the Supreme Court and the High Court, saying that the destroyer must pay for the damage done. And one thing more, it should not only be for the cost of the structure, which might have been rebuilt about built about 10 years back. Now the costs have increased. So compensation should be at the rate to be decided for the new building, for the new railway station, for the new train, for the new bus, whatever, at the present rates, not at the rates at which was done. No depreciation value should be recovered. It should be full market price which should be recovered. I think this action of Yogi would go a long way in ensuring that the public property is protected. And these nefarious politicians cannot play ducks and drakes with your money and with my money. Think about it.